Okay, y'all. Welcome back. Welcome back to Artificial Intelligence. So, on this show, we're talking about the intersection of creativity, ethics, and community. Now, we want to go on to the artist side. Remember, this is Art Official. We want to let you know that when we think about educators, educators are artists in their own rights, and we have one of the best right now. So, before we go into what Dr. Wright wants to explain about her art and just being, just a cultural keeper, keep that word as a cultural keeper. We want to ask what do we call a visual artist who does serve the community? So when we go back to a cultural keeper, these are people that they hold the space. They tell truth and they keep the culture alive. And you probably ask yourself, like, what is the culture? Well, when you think about the culture is really a setting where everybody's influenced to lay out their ideas and output. I think you have a saying of it takes a teamwork to make the dream work. People need to understand nothing was built in one day. Rome wasn't built in one day. That's another saying. And that's really existential when you think about art itself. That is gradually growing, it's always reflective. And that's why you have these cultural keepers, these artists that really make sure that they're preserving tradition, they're elevating the live experience. And most importantly, they're carrying the visual language of the people they are pretty much pertaining to. And that's their audience. So they're not trying to be loud, but trying to be everlasting with what they represent with their art. Dr. Wright is an artist, and when you think about her artwork, and I know she's going to definitely talk more about it, but I kind of want to boast on it. Her artwork, AI cannot duplicate. It can't replicate because one thing we know about AI, it does hallucinate. There's a time it's going to create maybe some artwork, but it won't be able to create it just the way it created just 5 seconds ago. But when you think about an artist that's art official, they're able to have this certain pattern in their artwork. They're able to come back to it and continue to not just recreate it, but even develop and see how to grow. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand. The mind of today has developed and grown. People see things differently now. People are seeing that it's really not just about what you know, but how you can actually push out what you know and share it in a way that it contributes to not just you, but somebody that wants to know more about what you are talking about and trying to represent. So that's passing on wisdom and skills to the next generation. So that's what an artist is. They're a mentor, they are a teacher, they're a facilitator, they're the culture keeper. And let me back up. When we talk about facilitators, we talked about in the last podcast how we teach this education course, Foundation of Education and Teaching. We have students who are going to be new teachers and they have that difficulty with how they create their output when they are sharing their ideas in the classroom. They just copy and paste AI. So what we are seeing now as we continue more about what happened previously and what we want to do for the next generation of the students that come in this classroom, we are guiding them into a way where they can co-create and co-imagine and contribute us as their own workshops or go into the classrooms at certain schools and then get into the storytelling and lesson plannings. So why is that important? Because again, even though we're facilitators, we are trying to create more facilitators. That's really what it is. You are trying to not only just create more of you, but you're also trying to get somebody to have their own space. They become their own keeper of the culture. And I think when we then go back to art, art itself is just really bringing a piece to the history of like content, especially in America, where I won't even want to deny sometimes history is maybe diluted, maybe it's blurred, and it's not really transparent, really where our history is, especially if as a black artist who is trying to navigate in this country of uncertainty of the economy today, they really don't know where to go. So when they come back to the reflection of who they are, they should be able to understand that they are a keeper of culture. They can't lose themselves now because they're trying to reclaim that space that could be forgotten if they don't document themselves and find a way to keep themselves relevant and most importantly, keep themselves transparent. So that's really now we come back into the academic language, right? We need to understand the artists have their own language. They have their own way of patterns, their own way of how they color things. They want to be transformative. Say they go into a museum, people are able to see the artwork and they are able to have their own perception of the artwork. Van Gogh is somebody that I would like to use for example. Nobody really understood that his art would be something that could captivate people later down the road. But I think that's really important when you think about the Black community. A lot of our art is something that people didn't think would captivate the rest of the world. We think about hip hop. We think about a lot of the arts that you see now through a Black afros. And this is really important because this is our ownership. And ownership is not something that you can just claim and say, this is what it is something that's emotional, something that's personal, and something that's historical. So that's really what this show's trying to let you know when we think about AI and the ethics of AI. It really needs to understand that we are making sure that we are creating art through AI that will still make sure that it serves the community and not just as a decoration, but as a documentation. We want to be able to create people to see AI that we're not trying to provide any problem for ourselves, but we're trying to provide healing and a legacy. So basically, that's the importance of this show. And as we talk more about really transparency, we want us to understand that you as a listener, as an educator, as an artist, or wherever you are in your life, you deserve to understand you are artificial.
Right. So, as we talk about the artist as a visual artist, so I see myself as a poetically conscious, erotic multimedia artist, and that's multifaceted in itself. And as someone who creates, when NFTs came out, that was like my biggest fear. Because I'm like, if I'm creating this art and it's an original piece, it's something that's just been birthed out of me. And now you have these NFTs, you have this AI where people can generate art now. Is that authentic? And so I don't know, at one point when I was sharing with you, and I was like, I know my art is official. And that's how we came up with the title for this podcast, Artificial. So as an artist who does poetry and I do art, so I combine the two in what I call poetry. I do have erotic art, I do have conscious art, and all these things come from how I decide to express myself. And so one of the things that I do, I have some work that I talk about shun because I love a play on words as an artist. And that's where the poetry comes into place. So when I thought about a reproduction or reprints, and I said reproduction, now I changed the ION, TION to SHUN. It's a shun. Because a reproduction is something that can only be printed on the mind of an original thought. So you will never be able to reproduce what I produced because it was my original thought. And AI could never reproduce that. And so the biggest fear is, will we as artists be replaced by artificial intelligence? Artificial, whatever it may be. So when we create, like it is transformative. I mean, when I create my art, I do it for the purpose of showing beauty in, of course, the male and female genitalia for one. I create it because I maybe experience something in society right now, something that's really happening politically or whatever. And then I want my art to be where it's like thought provoking, head to when you look at like, you see something which is really not there because it was not my thought. It was your thought. And so that's the kind of artwork I like to do. And so one of the first poems that I ever written was Color My World. And it's Color My World. Now listen, close your eyes and think about that. Color my world,
Color my words.
sketch my desires, paint my emotions, and draw me a better tomorrow. Notice that every word had something to do with, as an artist, I draw, I paint, you know.
You sketch, yes.
Absolutely. So, and as I told you, graphite is my weapon of choice, and that's what I use as an artist. So, it's always going to be a play on words, but that's the thing when you think about us as artists, will we ever be replaced by this artificial intelligence? And that's a scary thing that I don't like to think about that. And then there was one thing I had poemed one time when you look at art, step forward to see the imperfections in the art, right?
Mhm.
But when you step back, you see the imperfections perfected. Have you ever noticed that?
Wow.
Because when you look at something from a distance, it looks great,
Right.
right? It's all perfect and so on and so forth. But when you get close to it, so you can see all the imperfections,
See the flaws, sweet things.
and I see that in AI. I see all the imperfections in it. But if I step back, I see those imperfections perfected.
Mhm.
Mm, food for thought, right?
Food for thought.
Okay. So that's kind of like my take on when it comes to the artificial intelligence, AI, as we would say it in art. And that's why we're looking at artificial, because you will never be able to replace artists who are actually doing it, from the heart,
Uh-huh.
from the thought, and not a reproduction.
That's really interesting because it's true. Reproduction is something that it comes from the heart. Like she said, it comes from really just who you are. So,
Expressing something that you couldn't necessarily put in words oftentimes. So those who do poetry, essentially that's what it is, expressing that. But visual artists, we will express it in a drawing, a painting, and so on and so forth. So it could be our deepest thoughts. So you may look at something that's transformative, and we just talked about it a few minutes ago. You can look at a piece of art and you can cry because it touched you, because we all, humanistic, we all have empathy. We all, well, do, I don't know, all of us too, but, we all feel at some point. So that piece of art can resonate with each person very differently. So when we talk about colloquium in art, we could all be looking at the exact same piece of art, but we interpret it differently because we're all different people. So is AI going to collapse that and say we're all just one this particular thing? I don't know.
I think that's important because when you think about generative AI, it does create its own art, but it made me realize that no matter how many prompts you give it, it seems like it's always going to hallucinate and just give you what it gives to probably everybody else that gives it that same prompt. Whereas a artist will always have their own reproduction of what their pattern is, and it would never be the same as another artist. And that's really what's beautiful about being an artist. And that's what's really interesting about when people say AI is going to replace artists. I'm like, good take, good attempt.
And it's funny how you say that, how you can just keep changing stuff and it, whatever. And I think about the fact that most artists, when you look at our graphites, there are no erasers on them. So it's easy to erase something and try to do something else. But artists, we don't do that because we don't have erasers. I mean, of course, we have the needed eraser, but that's something external. But when you look at that, paintbrushes don't have, something that you can erase it. So we have to be creative in a way of taking something that's incorrect or maybe wrong or not what we really wanted and redoing it in such a way that we have now created a whole new piece that we hadn't thought about before.
Hmm. A new piece, one world, and it's not going to change the fact that humans will always be the originator of this beautiful piece we call world.
That's right.
So I think really what we want to give people for the takeaway is that you should be transparent as a
Mhm.
human and know that it's perfectly fine to use AI for your creative output and it won't replace you. But you should understand there are different languages from different people. And it's really up to us humans to come together and find the connections and find the coordinations to collaborate. And most importantly, you have to represent yourself. As Dr. Wright was saying, it's like there's so many ways we can look at reproduction, but the most important thing to see is that the imperfection of AI can be perfective when you take a step back and realize there's so much work to be done with humanity. All right, y'all. We have so much more coming up. We hope you enjoyed today's show and welcome to Artificial Intelligence. Bye for now.
and that's fiction.